got 3 left tonight to wrap up our series on the Beatitudes. So in a moment, Quentin is going to come, and he is going to speak on the pure in heart. I can think of no one better. And then Mulan is going to come, and she is going to speak on blessed are the peacemakers. And then Nathan is going to finish it off with blessed are the persecuted. So right now, though, we're going to go ahead and read the section again, just so everyone remembers everything we just talked about and it sticks. So here we go. One day, as he being Jesus, saw the crowds gathering, Jesus went up on the mountainside and sat down. His disciples gathered around him, and he began to teach them. God blesses those who are poor and realize their need for him, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. God blesses those who mourn, for they will be comforted. God blesses those who are humble, for they will inherit the whole earth. God blesses those who hunger and thirst for justice or righteousness, for they will be satisfied. God blesses those who are merciful, for they will be shown mercy. God blesses those whose hearts are pure, for they will see God. And God blesses those who work for peace, for they will be called the children of God. And God blesses those who are persecuted for doing right, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. God blesses you when people mock you and persecute you and lie about you and say all sorts of evil things against you because you are my followers. Be happy about it. Be very glad, for a great reward awaits you in heaven. And remember, the ancient prophets were persecuted in the same way. Also, just a quick reminder before I turn it to Quentin. This word blessed we see over and over and over again. To be blessed in the kingdom simply means God's favor, provision, and purpose is on your life. But that only happens as we align our attitudes, our lifestyle within what it says. So like pure in heart, blessed are those who mourn. We're setting ourselves, our mindset in alignment with the character of God and what he values in his kingdom. All right? So let's go ahead and have Quentin. Let's go.
While they do that. For those who have been here the past couple of weeks, you probably already know a little bit of the pattern that we break down each of these verses. I'm a math guy, so I see patterns a lot of times. And we always start off with the characteristic of blessed, and then we talk about the reward. So, like, blessed are the poor, blessed are those who mourn. We've already gone over it. But I luckily got the privilege of doing verse 8 on the Beatitudes. To start off, I'll be honest, I had no clue how I was even going to start tonight. I thought I'd give the definition of pure, or why does it say heart instead of mind? It was crazy to me that there were so many different avenues I could take for one small verse. So what did I do? I decided to go a complete opposite route. So just completely ignore the typical pattern. So, start off. I am going to give a definition, so yay. What does it mean to be impure? To start off, it means to be mixed with foreign matter, adulterated, morally wrong, especially in a sexual matter. Not going to lie, I looked at that definition and I was like, what in the world does adulterated mean? So I also got that one up, but I felt like this one was really specific and kind of stuck with what my verse was about. It means to render something poorer in quality by adding another substance, typically an inferior one. So impurity is something that is not meant to be in the substance or meant to be in whatever object that it is in. It's something that's less quality. So what does this mean in the spiritual sense? So first off, the easy question, hopefully it's easy. What makes us as humans impure?
Sin.
Winner. So I am going to have moments where I do say, y'all can talk. I'll look at y'all like I'm a lost puppy. So this is going to be a little more questions for y'all. So can someone give me a type of sin?
Murder.
Murder? So I know this definitely does say first aid antiseptic, but we're going to pretend it says sin because I couldn't find paper that was blank. So murder, I heard lust. Envy. Keep it coming. Sloth. Gluttony.
Greed.
Lying.
Coveting.
All those. Keep coming. Anger. So like, it's just a lot of sin. Like there's so much sin in the world. It's disgusting. It's just gross. Can y'all see that?
It's all brown.
It's all brown. It's gross. I'm gonna mix it together because life's experiences just mix up and make a person. And this is just a beautiful texture, isn't it? It's just clearly brown. This is my example today is Betty Crocker. Glad she was able to come here and help me out today. So this is representing us as humans. We, from day one, we're impure. We're born with sin. We all fall short of the glory of God. Whatever verse you can think of. We are not to the same comparison of purity. We have impurity in our lives. So we know what impure means. What does it mean to be pure? Another definition, it's without any extraneous and unnecessary element, free of contamination, wholesome and untainted by immorality, especially that of a sexual nature. Another synonym for it was innocence. So whenever I was thinking of purity, I was like, I need some biblical background on this. And what does it mean to be pure? Who is pure in the Bible? And so I got 3 verses for us. Psalms 12:6 says, the word of the Lord are pure words, like silver tried in the furnace of earth, purified 7 times. Proverbs 35, every word of God is pure. He is a shield to those who put their trust in him. And 1 John 1:5, this one doesn't say pure, but in light, I believe light is pure. This is the message we have heard from him and proclaim to you, that God is light, and in him there is no darkness at all. So, much like the first time, whenever I asked y'all to do different types of sin, take a gander at what I'm about to say now. What are certain qualities of God? Generosity. Love.
Joy. Peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness,
The
gentleness.
fruits of the Spirit, good job. All of those, just pure greatness, and it's just like poured into God. And I know that we just got the bleach smell out of this place, but I just made more. Woo-hoo! So,
My nose hairs are burning.
yeah, I know. Probably a lot of you are like, why did this guy bring bleach? And you're about to figure out, but it's okay. So, on one hand, we have this wonderful Betty Crocker who looks a little struggling in life. Brown, murky water, and then we have a lemon-scented bleach to represent God. You can still see through it, you can still see clearly, and it's okay. But so right here, I have a separation. On one hand, I have something that's pure, and another hand that's impure. Something that's full of sin, impurity, whatever you want to call it, and on the other hand, I have holiness and purity. So, the big question is, how can we get from this to this? Because whenever I look at this gross, disgusting looking thing to this clean looking substance, I'm like, how? Like, there is so much separation. I'm an impure person. I don't know how I'm going to get there into a place where I can feel clean, because even if I try to pick out the little pieces, I'm still going to be impure. No matter how hard I try to pick it up, there's still some of me that is still murky and still just not right with God, and it's just, I'm going to get the mic wet. So, no matter how hard we try, but even in, there's a verse in Hebrews 12:14, that I feel like it's just, we, in the Beatitudes, we see how we can see God. And then in Hebrews, it says how we cannot see God. And can you throw it up there, please? So Hebrews 12:14, work at living in peace with everyone, and work at living a holy life. For those who are not holy will not see the Lord. So in Hebrews, we see we will not see the Lord. In Matthew, we see we will see the Lord. And I always love that God has a habit of giving us instructions right before he tells us what's going to happen. He literally says, make peace with everyone and work at living a holy life. And in Job 15:14, Job asked Stephen the same question that I did, is can any mortal be pure? Can anyone be born of a woman be just? So that feeling that you feel like you're unworthy or you don't have a place to even be close to God, even a man who is so right with God that God was like, have you seen my servant Job? He was even questioning how he could be pure. So I definitely know looking at this murky brown thing can be disheartening because I know how messed up this world is and how we all fall short of the glory of God. So to answer the question that I said at the beginning, if you remember, I think it's heart instead of mind because it's the condition of our heart. It's not what we're thinking because the heart is the seat of all thought. It talks about how God will give us our heart's desires, and I know there's a lot more to that verse, but I'm just bringing up the point that our heart, our emotion, often drive us to do things. And so it's really, truly our heart condition that he's talking about here. So something I even found funny is that this perfectly, like this demonstration and everything that I've talked about so far, it perfectly lines up with God's gospel. So could you show it? So Caleb has shown me this multiple times of how to tell the gospel to someone, how to show that there's humanity and then there's God. And we see that separation. And the only way to get through that empty space, that separation, is through Jesus. So a couple of verses to go along with that I also just tell us what we should do is Romans 12:2. It says, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that the testing of you may be discerned what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect." 2 Corinthians 7:1. "Therefore, since we have these promises, dear friends, let us purify ourselves from everything that contaminates body and spirit, perfecting holiness out of the reverence for God." And lastly, Ezekiel 36:25-27. "I will also sprinkle clean water on you, and you will be clean. I will cleanse you from all of your impurities and all of your idols. I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit within you. I will remove your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. I will place my spirit within you and cause you to follow my statutes and carefully observe my ordinance." That last one that I went over, the I, if I'm remembering correctly, is God saying that. He says, "I will sprinkle clean water on you, and you'll be clean." And it's so cool because in Beatitudes it says to give us a pure heart. So many times we think we try to clean it out, but there's always going to be nastiness in this. But that's why we have to get that new heart that God gives us, that new spirit within us. So if we want to physically see God, and I mean like go to heaven, we must cleanse ourselves of these impurities, dive into the heart of God. We need to walk with Him and have an authentic relationship with Him. God is the only one who can purify us. So with this, I thought this was cool. So no matter what, whenever we start to have a relationship with Him, and I'm about to have to drop the mic so to do this stuff, and not in the sense of them finishing my speech. No, I'm good. So whenever we start to pour into a relationship with God, we're like in a place where we can learn about God, and then we allow God to join us. We get to see something really cool where the impurities in our lives start to disappear, and that it changes from a murky water to something that's pure and clean. So the only thing that we can do is that God will keep us pure, not whatever we try to clean ourselves with or whatever we try to do. The only thing that can purify our hearts is God. And the even cooler thing about it all is that when we stay with God, fully embrace Him, sin can't have a hold on us anymore. Like no matter how much I try to put this nastiness in, it'll just slowly disappear and it won't stain the water anymore. So, if we want to have a pure heart and we want to be able to see God, we have to do it in a way where we purify our hearts through God and let God change us, not our own ability.
So I got Matthew 5, verse 9, which is, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they are called the children of God." So, when I first picked this verse, when it was given to me, I thought, okay, peacemakers. They're just going to be people that make peace, and when we do, we are blessed, and we are called the children of God. Simple. That's what the verse spoke to me. That's what it means to me. But what does it actually mean? So here's a definition of what peacemakers are. It describes those who are no longer protecting their own self-interests, but seeking to implement God's principles of truth and graciousness in the relationships around them. So from that, I kind of took my own definition of what a peacemaker is. And so what a peacemaker is to me is that those who can handle uncomfortable situations. So it's those people that when they have pressures of life that hit them, they know how to handle these situations because they turn to God for peace. They don't turn to worldly peace, which is like alcohol or partying. So peacemakers are those who they know how to handle uncomfortable situations because they turn to God for peace. There are also people who help those who have broken relations with themselves and most importantly with God. And I also see them as the bridge between us as sinners or just normal regular people with God. I feel like they are the ones that bring people together to find peace through God. And so that's a little bit of what the verse means to me and what peacemakers are. I'm sorry. Okay, anyways, moving on. So I believe that as Christians and as believers, we are all called to be peacemakers. It doesn't matter who you are or where you're from, we're all meant to be peacemakers because we are all the children of God. And something I forgot to mention is that once we find that peace from God, we are able to share it with others. And once we share it with others, we represent God in this world. We represent His character, His image, and we do that by turning to God for peace. So, back to what I was saying, as Christians, we're all meant to be called peacemakers. And so what can we do to be peacemakers? Well, firstly, it starts with ourselves. We can't give peace to other people if we don't experience it for ourselves. So we can't create peace with someone if we don't experience it firsthand, and we cannot resolve conflicts if we have conflicts of our own. And we can't reconcile with others if we don't reconcile with others that are already in our life. All the conflicts that are in our life, we can't resolve them if we have them of our own. And so it's just like you can't love someone, you can't give love to someone if you don't love yourself. It just doesn't make sense. You need to experience it first to share it with someone. And so, in Luke 10, verse 5 and 6, it says, "When you carry peace, you know how to bring peace to your environment." Which is simple and makes sense because if you don't have peace, you can't give it to anyone. And if you do have peace, you're able to spread it to other people. So now that we know that peace needs to start with ourselves, how do we gain it? How do we get it from God? Well, it's simple as just praying. It's always just starts with praying. Just ask God to give you that peace when you go through trials and tribulations. Just lay it all to God and surrender it to Him, because He's the only one that's going to give it to you. You can't find peace in someone or something, because it's just not going to be the same peace as what God gives you. Peace comes from God, the one who created. He's the only one that can give it and take it away. You can't get it from someone else. And also in Philippians 4 verse 7, it says, "And peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guide your hearts and minds in Jesus Christ." Which basically means that if you set your mind on Christ, or you set your mind on Jesus, He will lead you to gaining peace. Okay. So now that I've said that peace starts with ourselves, that we need to have peace before sharing it with others, what's another characteristic that we see in peacemakers? And that is to be understanding and patient. Now, I know some of us in this room have that one friend or that one family member or neighbor that gets on your last nerve. I mean, I don't have one, I have a lot. But as peacemakers, we need to understand that everyone is different. You know, everyone thinks differently. Everyone looks different. Everyone comes from different races, religions, and so we need to, as peacemakers, we need to accept those people into our lives, accept the differences, because God made everyone with different personalities, and we need to know that. We need to accept that. And so the best way, and so when conflicts come, we know how to handle it, because when we create relations, when we create friendships with people and understand and know the truth behind why this person behaves like this, it's because we have let them into our lives and communicated with them and talked with them and understand why, share their experiences with them and know why they behave like this. So, to be a peacemaker is to be a communicator, is to always just communicate and then let people in, people that you don't feel like you want to make relationships. I know there are some people I look and I'm just like, oh yeah, I'm not talking to her because she's just, me and her are just not the same. We don't vibe with each other, no. Everyone needs to be in relationship with everybody, because as peacemakers, we need to be able to communicate and create relationships with each other. And what's weird is, we all have a relationship with God. How did our relationship with God start? Through communication. When we need guidance, when we need protection, or when we talk to God about our failures or successes, we communicated with Him, and that's how our relationship with God started. And so it's with communication. And so that's why as peacemakers, we need to set aside those differences in other people and just accept them into our lives. And yeah, just communicate with them, talk with them, and then we'll know and understand how each people think and behave, basically. So, lastly, one of the important characteristics of a peacemaker is a peacemaker is calm in a troubled situation. And that's a little like I don't know. Because when I think of peace, I think, okay, me on the bed with my popcorn and then watching my favorite movie. That's peace to me. Or if I'm on a beach and just with my orange juice and then just, just the sea, the sunset, that's peace to me, okay? That's peace. But there's a difference. There's a difference between God's peace and worldly peace. Okay? Like, for us to experience true peace is in the midst of a storm, or when we face trials and tribulations. And I'm just like, that doesn't make sense. Why would I put myself in a bad situation or in an uncomfortable situation, and how am I going to get peace from that? Well, here's the beauty of it. When we are afraid, when we are scared, when we're confused, when we have all these things, when we have pressure of life pressing on us, that's when we turn to God for peace. That's the time we give all of those troubles, all of those struggles to God, and ask Him, like, God, at this point, I don't know what I'm going to do. I can't do this without you. And so God's like, it's okay, I got you. He's going to be able to fill that space in your heart that needs peace. And like I said, we can't find peace in anything else but God, because He's the one that created it. But when we fall short of God, when we don't turn to God, when we just want to do our own thing and live with the motions, we will usually turn to what I just said earlier is worldly peace, which is the drinking, the alcohol, and the party. And don't get me wrong, it does give you peace. I mean, I've experienced it, and I've had fun with it, but I've realized that those things, those worldly peace, it's only temporary. It only lasts for a little while. It's like a quick fix. It's not gonna give you eternal peace. But with God, it's eternal because it's something that He works inside you, and then He allows you to work or handle situations that you didn't think you could without Him. And so that's one thing I learned in life, that worldly peace will not get you to where you want to be. It's not going to satisfy your peace. It's not going to fill you that empty space in your heart. And so, in John 14:27, it says, I am leaving you with a gift of mind and heart, and the peace I give is a gift the world cannot give you, so don't be troubled. Like I said earlier, worldly peace can give you that peace that God gives you. It's not eternal, it's only temporary. Yes. Also in John 16:33, it says, I have said these things to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but take heart, I have overcome the world. And also in Isaiah 26:3, He will keep in perfect peace all who trust in you, all whose thoughts are fixed on you. If we fix our minds, our hearts to God, He will move us in ways that we didn't know we could. He's gonna help us handle situations that we didn't know we could handle it. So all I'm saying is, if we want to find peace, it's just as simply as just asking the Holy Spirit to help us and fill us with peace. Because when God left, for example, when God left, and all the disciples said, wait, where are you going? You can't go. What are we going to do without you? At that point, God's like, it's okay. I'm going to send you someone better than me that's going to be able to help me, and that's the advocate, that's the Holy Spirit. Only He, if we turn to Him, He's the only one that's going to give us peace. So, when it comes to trials and tribulations, don't turn to the worldly peace, because that's not going to satisfy you, like I said. It's not going to fix your problems, and it's just not going to draw you closer to God. The only person and the only thing that can get you peace is through the Holy Spirit and the advocate.
Just start off a little bit. I have Matthew 5:10 through 12, and I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. So when we were getting to choose these, what scripture we're going to do for these sermons and all that, or these little devos or whatever you want to call them, I was late to quarter that day. So I'm getting all these messages saying, I call verse 4 or verse 10 or verse 6, and I'm like, I have no idea what's going on, so I just said 10. Okay, and this is what I got. So I had no idea what I was signing up for in the very beginning. And I'm not going to lie to you, I was when I first read this, I was extremely concerned, because I was like, I don't know how to preach about persecution. This is so hard for me. And dang, my iPad turned off. I just realized that. Anyways, so let's go. I just want to start off by actually reading the verse. So I just want to read the first two verses, and I'll get to the last one towards the end. But verse 10 starts off, says, Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you, and utter all kinds of evil things against you falsely on my account. So, this is where I like to call the special part of Beatitudes. This is the part where it's kind of understood that your persecution, it says, I was going to say this later, but persecution is not expected if, it says when it is going to happen. blessed are you when, not if, you're persecuted. And I was like, okay, we're going to be persecuted, but how do we know? Like so many of us are feeling like, hey, we're not being persecuted right now. People often get worried about that and all that. And I say this, persecution will not come unless you are living out your life according to the rest of the Beatitudes. Are you hungering and thirsting for righteousness' sake? Are you mourning for the sake of the lost in the world? Are you being pure in heart? Are you being humble? Are you being, well, I was going to say, my translation says meek, but are you realizing you're poor in spirit and realizing that you are in need of God? Are you, all these other things, it says, sorry, I'm just like everywhere right now. I'm like trying to follow my notes, but then I always get off track. So this is my downfall when I talk in front of people. I always get off track and then I lose my place in my notes. So I was just, like I said, you are not going to be persecuted unless you're living your life according to these other things. And I would challenge you as we go forth out of this today, like examine yourself. Look at the areas you are weak in according to this sermon and according to the Beatitudes, and be like, God, just give me strength to go and fix this area. Like, God, help me to realize my hunger and thirst for you. God, help me to realize that I need to mourn for the lost in this world. And so, I was thinking about it, and I was like, why? Why would we be persecuted if we are living according to this world? Not according to this world, according to the Beatitudes. I mean, the Beatitudes say, like, blessed are you when you're being a peacemaker. Like, why would they persecute a peacemaker? Why would they persecute somebody? Am I speaking too loud on this mic? I feel like I'm speaking way too loud on this mic. Okay. Why would they be so mean to somebody who is why would they persecute somebody who's showing mercy? Why would they persecute somebody who is hungering and thirsting for righteousness' sake? And I say to that, the standards of righteousness for this world and the standards of righteousness according to the Bible are vastly different. So many times, I was watching a YouTube video on this. I'm not even gonna lie to prepare for this, and he brought up the point. He says, "When was the last time you saw somebody get an award outside of the church for hungering and thirsting for righteousness? When was the last time you saw somebody getting an award for being merciful?" The contrast of what Jesus says here and the contrast of this world are vastly different. And if you are not living according to Beatitudes, if you're not living according to what Jesus says here, you will not face persecution because you might be living with the world. I'm not saying you're living with the world, but you might be. And for some of you, you might be freaking out and be like, "Oh, Nathan, I've not been persecuted yet." And it's probably going to come eventually. And I want to encourage you right now to stand firm, stand strong in your faith, and stand firm, strong in your the desires of God and for your life. And I just kind of want to talk about it. It says, "Blessed are you when others." I want to talk a little bit about the different forms of persecution. So we oftentimes think of persecution like the forms in the Bible, where Paul and Silas were literally jailed and beat and whipped, and Jesus was crucified and Peter was crucified upside down. That is not all persecution, okay? And we see that in verse 11. "Blessed are you when others revile you," I cannot say that word, "revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil things against you falsely on my account." So persecution might not necessarily be put in jail. Persecution might not necessarily be being beaten. Persecution might not be dragged through the streets or stoned or whatever. But it could be, "Hey, Quentin, you're stupid for believing that." It could be, "Hey, I heard Allie did this," or anything to hurt your reputation. Okay, it might not just be, "Hey," it could be anything. If it is hurt, it mean words. I one time over the summer, and this is just an example, I was working at an internship in a very secular environment, and I was talking to my mentor, and every day I would come into work, and I'd get there about an hour early, so I could sit at my desk and I could read my Bible. And she came in one day and she looked me in the eyes and said, "Nathan, I want to be honest with you, everything that's wrong in this world is wrong because of Christians." And that was my first real face-to-face conversation with like persecution in any way. I was so confused. I was like, how could you say that? How could you believe that? And she goes, I just look at the world and I see these things, and I'm like, well, and then that was a good opportunity for me to talk to her and spread the gospel. She didn't like accept Jesus at that moment. I feel like she was planting, the seeds were planted in that moment. And some of us, I'm going to move on a little bit. And some of us are like, well, why would I want to be persecuted? Why would I want to live my life according to these Beatitudes if I'm going to be persecuted for it? Well, that's where I want to get into verse, I want to say 13, but it's 12. I don't know why I get 12 and 13 confused. Blessed are you when hang on. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. For so they persecuted the prophets who were before you. Oh, it's up there too. Look at that. Yeah, I wish I could have read that this time. Put it up there. I can't hardly see that. Krista, you got to stop them aloud. But so you're like, why would I want to be persecuted? Why would I want to live my life according to these if I'm just going to be met with hate? And I say this is this life that we live. Let's say the average life of all of us is going to be like 85. Let's say we all just going to die 85 for argument, like purpose's sake. This life that we live here is just a small grain in the entire vastness of eternity. So if we're being persecuted here, if we stand firm in our faith and continue to live our lives according to this, Jesus says himself that we will be rewarded greatly in heaven. And I'm not so presumptuous to say what that reward may be, but I truly believe that the reward will be just to get to know and to love and to worship God eternally. And just one last thing, don't let persecution be the reason you don't follow God. It says in the Bible, and I think in Joshua 1:9 says, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid, for the Lord your God goes before you. So they persecuted the prophets, they persecuted Jesus, and they might persecute you. And I just say, be strong, stand firm. Just to leave you with a little real-life example from another man, Nikolai Kamara. He was a thief in the Soviet Union around the 30s or 40s, somewhere around there. And back then, being a thief in the Soviet Union, didn't matter how big or how small, it caught you 10 years in prison. So he got caught. He was spending his life in prison. And while he was there, he would occasionally see Christians come in. And all the time, the government of the Soviet Union would be like, hey, I need you to, you can't be a Christian, renounce your faith right now. And they would always say no. And so eventually he was talking to one of them and says, why don't you guys renounce your faith? And he said, and so eventually after that conversation, he became a Christian himself. And then after he got out of prison and faced intense persecution himself, he was arrested, and him and his pastor at the time of an underground church were both arrested. And they said, if you guys don't give the names of other members of your church, we're going to poke out Nikolai's eyes. And he said, and this is one of the greatest shows of faith I've ever heard in my life, he said, do it. Because I will know after you have poked out my eyes, I will see the most beautiful thing in the world, and that's the face of my God. And so he did. And then they threatened to cut out his tongue afterwards. And he said, praise be to the Lord Jesus, God on most high. And he said, there, you can cut out my tongue, because I have said the greatest things my tongue can utter. So as we face persecution, stand firm in your faith. Stand strong in your faith, and do not shy away from it, because the Lord your God has gone before you, and the Lord your God will be with you in everything that you do.
So over these last few weeks, we've heard a lot of different teaching and thought on these different Beatitudes, and really these final three, pure in heart, peacemaker, persecution, all really go hand in hand with each other. Because when we allow God to purify our lives, to set us free from sin and selfishness, we're going to experience the peace of God, and we're going to want others to experience that same peace. And I love that verse that says those who work for peace in their own lives, work for peace in their relationship with God, work for peace in their relationship with others. It's work. Peace is work. And when we do that, when we pursue that higher calling of Christ, that those who don't have that peace will then come against us. And so tonight, I just want to give you opportunity. So we're going to do something a little different. As the band plays, I'd like for you, we're going to break into our small groups, our D groups. And if you're saying, okay, well, I haven't really gone to D group yet, just go with some of the people that you're around, with them to their D group. And in your D groups, your leader is going to ask you which one of these three stands out to you. Now, for some of you, it's I ain't got peace, Caleb. Something's going on in my life and I don't have peace. Maybe that peace is purity of heart related. There's sin in your life. There's things going on that you realize, I know I shouldn't be doing these things, and I feel the peace of God being absent in my life because of it. Maybe there's conflict around you, and you know you're going to have to fight for peace in those relationships. Or maybe you are living in that peace, and people are coming after you. Maybe it's family, maybe it's friends, maybe you thought were friends. People, because you've committed to follow Jesus, they're coming against you, trying to pressure you, trying to push you off of your walk with Jesus.